Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Advice Guru podcast. We are on episode, I think, 102 today. So, really pleased to be joined by Paul Day. And Paul is the founder and director of Network Consulting Services. Hello, Paul. How are you?
Well, I'm very good indeed, Stuart. Thank you very much for the invitation and joining you.
Oh, no problem at all. Well, we've had a little chat pre coming on, and you told me you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan. I'm licking my wounds from you thrashing us on Saturday. So, yeah, good result for you guys.
Yeah, it is, but we're still mediocre and below our noisy neighbours of Sheffield United. So I think we both can just hide in the closet for a while.
Yes. Okay. Well, yeah, I think we'll be looking at League One football next season, but yeah, Sheffield looked okay, but you made us look very, very bad. I think we made you look good.
Yeah, good.
Um, so yeah, delighted you could come on to the podcast. And I actually found you a few weeks ago from a LinkedIn post that you
Yep.
did,
Uh-huh.
which is the league table, which is something we're going to talk about. But yeah, tell us a little bit about what your job is then as an independent consulting service.
Okay, well, the business itself is just to help advisors and firms find the right proposition that fits their requirements, their priorities, and their business. It's a free service, and they do a deep delve on what their business mix is and what they're trying to achieve. Sometimes it does go into paid consultancies if it's anything other than placement, but that's effectively it. I've got no alignment with any of the networks. I just place based on the requirements. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't have all the networks, but the vast majority that I do deal with.
Brilliant. Okay, so there's a few things there. So is that what industries is that? What do you cover?
Um, Sorry, industries
Is it
in
mortgages, investment?
the whole shooting match. Basically, anyone that's involved in the advisory process,
Yeah.
if they're employed, self-employed, looking to set their own business up, if they're investments, if they're pensions, if they're primarily protection or mortgages, it's anybody that advises in the regulated space.
Fabulous. And how long have you been doing this for?
Well, this is my third year in this business. Prior to that, I did have a very similar business that I set up with a business partner. Saw my interest in that, and he carried on for 12 years or so, and then retired. Currently living near Barcelona, tootling around on his mountain bike, olive farming and rowing of a morning. So he's living the life. But as soon as he retired, I always regretted selling my interest in the business and thought when he's retired. I picked the baton back up and set it up again. So yeah, so this is his
Brilliant.
third year as network consulting.
But you've been doing this type of thing for 15 years.
Well, no, always been around the intermediary space, advice and intermediary space. I've cut my teeth as an advisor myself, a wealth advisor. I've been a mortgage and protection advisor, then worked for a tech company that was morphed into the largest dedicated mortgage and protection network, part of the senior team that set that network up. And just around the intermediated space thereafter, protection, specialist lending, yeah, always around the intermediated space.
Fantastic. So obviously you produce the league table, but your day-to-day job is helping advisors who either become disillusioned with their current network or they're coming in as new, or what type of
Well, yeah, all of the above. There's I think the most active space at the moment is one, two, or three advisors that are dropping out of multi-advisor practice to set up their own practice. But it's the whole. It's right across the piece. It is people just passed their exams looking for a place to get competent advisor status, either in mortgages and protection or wealth, right up to large multi-advisor practices looking at what's available for their next step or moving away from the current network. So yeah, everything.
Yeah, great. So is it some recruitment you do, or is it when people want to change from their current status, you help them support them?
I don't like to consider myself as a recruiter because generally recruiters have got a job
Yeah,
in which they're trying to find an advisor to fit into it. Whereas I speak to what is your next move? And
yeah,
sometimes I talk to people and I will genuinely say, you're better off staying where you are. What you want, you've got.
Yeah.
what you're looking for. So it's just finding if somebody's going to make the next step in their career is just helping them put through the noise and
Yeah.
the misinformation and the sales spin and give them the hard facts to say, here you go, this is what fits what you're
Yeah.
looking for.
I think the other aspect is the companies out there, a lot of them only know their company. So if you as an advisor go to a firm, they'll only tell you about them. They can't tell you about anyone else. So to have
Uh,
someone like you is really useful.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I would hope so. And everyone virtually, I hear it weekly. I wish I'd have talked to you first.
Oh, really?
Or I wish I'd have talked to you 3 months ago. I've had people contacting me. They joined the network or done a proposition and then come across me and they've realized they've made the wrong decision and say, I wish I'd have known about you. And it's
Uh,
just getting that reach. Yeah. Sorry, what was the question again? What did you ask me before that? I took us
uh,
down a cul so
yeah, I was no, I'm more trying to find out sort of the use that people put your skills to, and I was just really saying the point that your business is a unique business in that you've got the neutrality, whereas no network is ever going to say, "Don't go with us, go with this other firm."
yeah,
So,
absolutely. Well, to be fair to some networks, they will say they do. There are networks out there which have received referrals from saying "Look, your business doesn't suit our proposition."
okay,
So occasionally you do get that, but you
what
will
sort of
get.
reasons would they say no for then?
Well,
It's
it might just be as simple as the product types that they deal in, or it might be that they're a new startup and the network only want established firms and we'll try and
yeah,
put them into another firm. So there are a whole number of reasons, but you're quite right in the fact that when someone's remember your question now, but it is when someone's involved in a business and or advising, that's what they do. That's
yeah,
what they're doing day to day. They're not paying attention to who's offering what as a proposition, and they don't look at that. But when they take their head up out of the trenches and say, "Okay, what do I want to do next?" That's when they start to look,
yeah,
and it's at that point. And if they're going to have three, four, five, six meetings with networks or other propositions, you're talking about a week's worth, maybe 2 weeks worth of work in doing that.
yeah,
Half an hour conversation with myself, I'll be able to cut all that, as I said, white noise down and hone in to say these ones that you want to concentrate on, being the proposition
right,
that suit. And that is it. And you're quite right, is that if someone they do speak to a specific network, the network are trying to get you to move into their
yeah,
proposition. So in some circumstances, they will be trying to get the proverbial square peg into the round hole to
sure.
get the numbers in, but not always. There are some good sales practices and there's some poor sales practices. But it's just as I say, I'm here to be able to cut that time investment that's required in finding the right proposition for the company, for the firm, for the advisor.
So how do you get your information then? How have you collated which networks do what? Is that experience or
Yeah, well,
research?
no, it's meetings with the networks to pull all the information, a definitive question set, an
Yeah,
in-depth question set, looking at all kinds of features, um, um, some minutia, some really chunky things. I do due diligence on financial situation and look at not
yeah,
just because you look at the accounts. I mean, the accounts can be 2 years old, but I've subscribed to a piece of kit that where I can see more up to date. And it's not foolproof as nothing is, but it gives me more of an indication. I speak to current advisors to get some user um, interaction. So that it's okay,
right.
all well and good looking at the proposition and the features and the culture, speaking to the users and the advisors and firms in there, you're getting it on the inside looking out than the outside looking in. So there's a whole lot of research and due diligence done
Yeah, yeah.
to collect the information in order to speak authoritatively about it.
Brilliant. So that's really interesting. So advisors out there, so if anyone's listening on this call, sorry, on this podcast, and they think, actually, I'm one of those people, I'm not particularly happy with my network. What should their process be from that?
The very first thing I would say that anybody does is look at your contract. You've got to look at your contract, understand what it's going to look like for you to take a step out. Because I did another LinkedIn post about contractual tie-ins and all kinds of things. And I'm just writing a big piece now that's going to go out into some of the publications about what to be aware of. So very
Yeah.
first thing is look at your contract, understand what it is when you're exiting. Think about what it is that you want, what the ultimate goal is for your business, or you as an advisor, and think about the priorities and what are your non-negotiables, what you must have, what you really, really want, what type of culture you want, and also things that you definitely don't want. Once you've got that, then I would say pick up the phone, look at my website. There's some good pointers on the website. Follow me on LinkedIn. There's some good posts on there with a bit of advice. Or
Yeah.
pick up the phone, stick an inquiry in, and I'll just talk you through it. If I can't help them, or the better where they are, I'll tell them straight away. If I can, a little bit, but it'll take maybe a couple of hours, or all said and done. Um, Um, yeah, and I'll make a recommendation or recommendations of
Sure.
the propositions that fit the requirements they're looking for. That's it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you said something really interesting there. That was contracts and read
Yes.
contracts. So I had a directly authorized firm, and now I've gone under a network for my advice firm. And that was probably 2 or 3 years ago. I was speaking to networks, having a look at contracts,
Mhm.
and my wife is a solicitor, so she helped me
Oh,
and looked
good.
at contracts in detail. What is your perception or understanding of how closely advisors do look at their contract before they sign them?
Well, it's unfair to tar everyone with the same brush, but generally speaking, many people I speak to don't even read the contract
Wow.
when they just sign it. They'll look at the commercial terms,
Yeah.
and that's it. But the most important thing, and it might seem counterintuitive, excuse me, it might seem counterintuitive to be looking at your divorce settlement when you're just about to get married,
Yeah, the
but
prenup. Yeah.
you must look at the exit terms before leaving, how they treat various things, if there's any penalties, if there's any covenants, client marketing rights, is the contract renewable, is the treatment of unearned commission in protection commission as indemnity.
Yeah.
All those things is just looking at those, and it's worth spending a couple of £100 and getting independent legal advice
Yeah.
to say, and don't be afraid to walk away from a contract. If somebody thrusts a contract in front of you, number one, if the contract is overly one-sided, do you want to be dealing with a company that is presenting you with a contract as such, if it's really in their favour, or
Yeah.
in the first instance, or don't be afraid of negotiating and have things removed. But I've got to counter this. I've got to try and be balanced on this, really, because
Yeah. Sure.
with some propositions, you will speak to them, and then put an awful lot of investment into your firm. That might be it might be man hours, it might be physical investments to help you make that transition. That's got to come with some kind of handcuff. So you can't expect it all one way. But just be aware of the terms that you're signing up to. If someone's going to give you 10, 20, £100,000 to make that move to help it as an incentive, there's going to be some handcuffs with that. There's going to be a time period, and because you can't expect everything your way, but just be balanced. But read the detail. Make sure that you are comfortable with that.
Wow. There's a lot there. So let's unpick some of that, Paul, because there's some really interesting points. So read the contract. That sounds like a very, very basic thing to do, but I know people don't, because I know people who don't. Um, so that can cause hiccups. But getting legal advice on it for only around £200, is that
Well, you see,
realistic?
I don't know what the cost is. To be fair, I've found a couple of legal representative solicitors that have said they're happy to have a conversation with
Okay.
anyone, and one of them was from recommendation. One was this guy that I know is prevalent in the FS space, and I've come across another one only last week where a network particularly like this solicitor. So I've got three that I'm aware of, but it's get a contract solicitor, lay out what your business is, go and get the advice. They'll give you a quote, and I'm sure it's only going to be a couple of £100
Yeah.
to do that, and it's worth it in the long term because
Great
it could
investment,
cost
isn't
you
it? Yeah. Yeah.
could cost you tens of thousands of pounds. There's
Yeah.
particular instances where I've come across firms that can't move. They literally cannot move because they're tied in. The contract has got them wrapped up so much, and in order to move, it's going to cost them hundreds of thousands of pounds to take that step.
Wow.
That they didn't understand the terms at which the contract holds them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's crucial to find out those things at the start so that you're going in with open eyes.
Mhm.
Hopefully you'll always stay with the same network because there are some brilliant networks out there and it's in their interest for you to do well. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree with that, and that's the premise on which I work. Is if someone has to come back to me 12 months, 2 years down the line, providing there's no major change in contract terms with the network, or there's been no regulatory changes, and I don't believe that I've done it right. It's a marriage for life, and the same goes with going DA. I don't. Again, another LinkedIn post I did recently. I got a Freedom of Information Act
okay.
uh, request from the FCA, and the number of applications, they're less than 30% approved than what they were 5 years ago. So they've dropped
Wow.
w- enormously, and that's down to
So
consumer
sorry, so
duty.
just rewind there. So 70% of applications for directly authorized for a company to go to directly authorized are being rejected by the FCA.
No, sorry, I probably misworded that. Right, 5 years ago,
Yeah.
well, as of last year, there were 30% approvals of what they were 5 years ago.
Oh,
Whether
okay.
that I've
Because
not got that. I didn't ask. Unfortunately, I didn't ask in the Freedom of Information Act what percentage are declined. It was one question that didn't think of that
okay.
I wish I had have done. But
Yeah.
it illustrates that the appetite to go DE is not what it was 5 years ago.
See, so they're receiving 30% of the applications that they were 5 years ago.
Well, that you see, we could assume that they're getting 30%, but it might be they're getting the same amount and the FCA are asking them to withdraw, or they're not meeting threshold conditions. I don't know the answer to that.
Uh,
That's the thing with that. But again, I speak to people that want to go DA, and I say, do you understand the threshold conditions? Do you know about capital adequacy? And the thing about going DA, and it is ultimately right for some firms, not
yeah.
all, but it is right for some firms. And if it is, it's preparation. Prep your application, prep the interview process and the application process, because you will be interviewed. And
Yeah.
prep what you need to know that you're going to have to do in reporting and your day-to-day oversight and your TNC, and just prep it all. It'll
Yeah.
just make the journey a lot easier for you. But I would say 8 times out of 10, the people that contact me about going DA is not right for them.
Okay. Okay.
He's normally guys that want to go from RI, an advisor,
Yeah.
within a DA firm and say, I want to go DA straight away. They just don't meet the threshold conditions.
That
But
makes sense.
again, it's also because I don't want to try and portray that this is, oh, everything should go this way and everything should go that way. It's what is right for the
Yeah.
individual or the firm.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So my next question then is about volumes that are changing, or so do we know those figures about?
I don't know. Again, this is we can make um, an educated guess that given the fact that the DA applications or approvals, more accurately, are down to less than 30% of what they were previously. So you can make an assumption that the trend is going to network.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a good place to be. If the marriage is right, it's a good place to be. There's a lot of protection, etc. But I honestly don't know what the movement is DA, or the trend is DA to AR, AR to
yeah,
DA. The vast majority of people I speak to are looking for an AR position or within a network, and but
okay.
there's movement between the networks as well, as you can see on the
Yeah.
table.
Well, that's the next point I was going to bring you on to actually, because this is how I discovered you. Looking at your LinkedIn post and seeing your really interesting chart. Obviously, a chart isn't the best thing for a podcast
No,
to get across. You and I can
yeah.
see it, but people who are watching can't. So if they want to see this, Paul, where should they go? And
What they can you can go onto my LinkedIn feed and see it there. It's on my website, which is network consulting.co.uk. And you can see it there under league tables. And it's being published by mortgage strategy, and there's another one about to be published by Money Marketing, which is on the wealth space. This is the one that we're looking at now is primarily focused towards mortgage and protection, but
Okay.
obviously there are the advisors that hold different permissions and networks that hold different permissions that primarily operate in wealth. But there's as you can see on there, there's 30 networks that are above 20 AR firms appearing there, and you can see what they've gained in the last 12 months, how many appointed representatives they gained in the last 12 months, how many they lost in how many they lost in the last quarter or gained in the last quarter, and the total number of advisors and the average number of advisors per firm. So it gives you a good indication of what's happening. And as I said
Really.
before,
So I recognise a lot of the names on here, and as you'd perhaps expect, you've got SJP, St James's Place, at the top
yeah,
of this list, and you've got all the famous names, so Primis, Quilter, Stonebridge, Openwork, HL, The Right Mortgage Limited,
yeah,
etc. So you've got some huge Mortgage Advice Bureau, Leaf Sense, Valence Park, Mortgage Intelligence. So you've got everyone there. What's really interesting, though, for me and perhaps for the podcast listeners, is the number of advisors with mortgage permissions.
yeah.
So we've got some different numbers there. So the biggest firm or network with mortgage permissions is that Openwork. Is that right?
It's Primis, isn't it? Oh no, yeah, it is. No, it's Openwork. Yeah,
Openwork.
Openwork. And what you've got to remember is that the Openwork, although they've got a lot of one-man band AR firms, they've also got some massive multi-site and multi-advisor operations.
Okay.
But again, you look at MAB and they've got more. They take on the bigger firms that got multi-advisors, and their average advisors to firm is 10.1,
Yeah.
whereas Openworks is 4 advisors to the firm
So
average.
MAP are big companies with lots of
Yeah.
advisors,
Yes.
which makes them one of the biggest and well-known companies, whereas your other ones, like SJP, they have half an advisor per firm. How does
Yeah,
that work?
that's because there's advisors. It looks incorrect when you first look at it, but it's because not all of SJP, as was in the title, St James's Place Wealth Management PLC.
Yes.
They're primarily
Focus
focused towards
Yeah.
wealth, but the wealth league table will show the
Yeah.
number of wealth advisors. But there are some inadequacies with the FCA data, which I'll not go into because it's not be boring for your listeners. But what that's saying is that of the total number of firms that they've got, there's an average of a half an advisor per firm, which means half the firms
Don't have an advisor.
don't have a mortgage advisor.
That's really interesting. Okay, so this podcast started as a later life lending podcast, but we're definitely going more mainstream into mortgages, into mainstream mortgages. But I guess my question would be, and how could it be collated to see how many of these firms have advisors who are later life or equity release?
Oh yeah, that's easy. That's easy. Now you see if you look at the column H there, it's got FCA register CPD 20 and CPD 21.
Yes.
When you look at the register, you just look at the row and select CPD 21, which accounts for that is the FCA label attached to well, I said later life equity release permissions.
Yeah.
So those and they're lumped in together. And when you do that, when I pull the table together, when you do the CPD 20, which is standard mortgage advisors, and then add in CPD 21, the number doesn't jump much, which indicates that there are only a few dedicated equity release advisors within each of those networks. I hope that makes sense. There's a lot of acronyms there and a lot of labels, but apologies if
that's really interesting. So CPD 20 and CPD 21 are mortgage and equity release permission.
Correct. Per advisor.
Per advisor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you got the information where you could dig out how many equity release advisors are within each firm of these?
I don't have it now, but it's taken
It's
me.
something you can.
Stuart, pulling the table together is such a tedious task.
You told me about how long this
Yeah,
takes. How long does this take?
it takes me about 2.5 days to pull it together to get it done. But obviously, it gets a lot of attention. But I pull the raw data, so I've got the raw data. But just thinking this through, that wouldn't tell me. I would need to go into each network at the time to look at individual numbers of equity release permission holders.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's something I could do for the next one, but it'd probably add a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours to the overall pulling it
I just
together. But
think it
it's
would be really powerful because we are saying that equity release shouldn't be something we talk about in isolation anymore. We should talk about later life lending, but then we should talk about all types of lending because then that conversation becomes easier. So to know how many later life lending qualified advisors there are within each network would be fascinating, and I know would get a lot of use. Um, so yeah, let's
okay.
part. But my question.
I've just made a note. That's just gone onto the things to do list.
Oh, thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. And then I guess my question is then an overall question of your brilliant charts that take you a long time to do. Who uses them and what are they currently being used for?
The charts.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you know, it's, I think a lot of advisors look at them to see who's strong networks. And
yeah.
this, I must iterate this, is that this is not a chart to say who is best.
No,
It's
no. Good point.
purely what the size of AR firms and what the movement is. So
Yes.
there's advisors that look to, because they don't know all the networks available. And this has not got all the networks. There are plenty of firms that are classed to be networks that don't appear in this because they've got 20 ARs. And just for the listeners of this, just to establish what is a network, it's 5 appointed representative firms,
Okay.
or if you've got less than 5 firms, if there are 26 or more advisors within those AR firms, then you then are classed to be a network, and you've got additional reporting and additional, as
Um,
far as the FCA are concerned,
yeah.
additional responsibilities. So that said, coming back to your question, is that providers use it. The number of people that contact me ahead of being published, it increases every quarter because they're using it in their presentations to the board.
Uh,
So you've got lenders, you've got insurers, all using this information to say who's growing, who's not.
yeah, yeah.
But again, that's useful for me because I'm being talked about. And if they come across an advisor that's unhappy, then they remember me. So it's all useful. So there's tech providers that use it. It's the aim of it is to not so much educate, but give advisors and firms a tool to see what's happening in the marketplace with regards to networks. But it's anyone that is involved that touches the advisory process, either a product provider, a service provider, tech, etc.
Yeah.
It's anybody that is touching the advice space, but
Yeah.
it's aimed towards advisors.
Great. And my last question then is where would you want to see this chart going in the next year? What sort of uses or development would you be really pleased with?
But to be honest, this is going to sound really selfish and commercial. It's just to get the reach of my business out there because it
Yeah.
gets a lot of attention. As I said, it's a tedious, boring, monotonous job to pull it
Yeah.
together, but it gets tens of thousands of impressions on LinkedIn. It gets picked up by publications, and it's just reach. So, from my perspective, that's what I want to do. Could it attract some kind of sponsorship? Again, I'm talking commercially, but it's selfish. But it, from a layman's perspective, or trying to be more detached from the commercial side of it, is it's useful for advisors to take a
Yeah.
look. Don't make use it as a tool to choose the firm that you want, but just gives you an educational piece to see, right, what is happening? Why have they lost 44 firms this year?
Yeah.
What's
Sure.
so if you have a meeting with that particular network, what's happening? It just puts you in a more a more informed position to make the right choice of what proposition it is that's right for you.
Great. Paul Day, that's been really interesting. Thanks ever so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for allowing me to come on.